Welcome to Scoreography, a podcast about the greatest sport on ice, figure skating. I'm Wendy Buskey.
And I'm Adrian Buskey. And in this episode, we're going to be talking about the 2024 Shanghai Trophy and Denis Ten Memorial Cup events that just happened about a week ago, as of the time of our recording this. Denis Ten is part of the Challenger Series, but Shanghai is just an international standalone event. But these are both important, smaller events for a lot of teams to be getting their programs out for the first time. Like a lot of things in the run-up to the Grand Prix, these events are significant on their own, but I think in a lot of ways it's people debuting programs and really kind of getting experience before the bigger ISU events.
Yeah, I mean, and even if it's not their first competition of the season, it's still kind of a warm-up event. And at least based on what I've seen on social media, the Shanghai Trophy is just one heck of a competition to get invited to for the skaters, because based on what I saw, nice hotel, nice experience overall, a free trip to Shanghai is sort of what it looked like. I may be incorrect, but I'm basing it on, for instance, what I saw on Luna Hendrix's Insta stories, which was real nice.
Swanky.
Very swanky.
So yeah, I think Shanghai carries a certain amount of prestige for being, a non-challenger, non-Grand Prix kind of event.
It's an interesting one, but I've enjoyed what I've seen of it. It's obvious in their production that they are making an effort to make it look bigger than maybe it is. It's in a very fancy arena, and they often have someone on the ice taking shots of the skaters as they're finishing up their programs and waving at the camera.
I think that the popularity of on-ice perspective has led a lot more events to send somebody out onto the ice with them. That's becoming more of a thing
on-ice
lately.
Perspective just does it better than anybody,
well,
though.
They're the standard by which all of the rest of them are being compared, but it is still kind of a fun element. Denis Ten is a smaller event in Kazakhstan, in Astana, which when you talk about the photos that we've seen from people on like Instagram from it, Astana looks gorgeous. I mean, the locale for all of that looks absolutely wonderful, but it was a very low attended event by every metric that we could see visually. I've heard people say that most of the crowd was seated behind the judges and that the cameras just didn't capture them. So most of the audience is just not visible in any of the
So you can hear applause, but you don't know where it's coming from.
Right, exactly. So versus Shanghai, where it seemed like to have a pretty good turnout. So this is going to be sort of experimenting with format here. We're going to divide this up not by event, but by discipline. So we're going to talk about ice dance, and then we'll talk about both events, ice dance competitions, and we'll do the same for all the rest of them, with the exception for Paris, because Paris did not have a competition at the Denis Ten Memorial Cup. I feel like it just allows us to kind of stay thematically on point.
With the preseason.
Right. And also in some of these divisions, there's not very many competitors in them.
That's really what it's more to me about, keeping it based in division, not competition. Because, for instance, we're going to start with dance, and there were only 4 teams that competed at the Shanghai Trophy.
And I think that to a certain extent, what's going to overshadow the dance competition at that event is the news that hit right before it started. So we talked last season about the allegations that had been raised against Canadian skater Juhnwan Cha that hung over all the ISU events that he and his partner Laurence Fournier-Boudre were competing in last season. It made a lot of the fan base uncomfortable because he was allowed to continue competing while those allegations were being investigated. And those are things that are always difficult to talk about and very complicated to kind of look at as far as how it gets handled. But right before Shanghai, Lolo and Nick were supposed to compete. I believe they were actually in China. They're
ready to go
when Canada's Office of Abuse-Free Sport had come out with a statement saying that they were going to be putting out a 6-year suspension for Sorensen based on those allegations.
Right. And the ban itself would be coming from Skate Canada.
I mean, it effectively ends his career, really.
I mean, by making it 6 years, it feels incredibly specific to both of their ages, because in 2 years, not even 2 years now, but the next Olympic Games is in 2026, and then the following is 4 years later. So by making it a 6-year ban, it essentially takes this Olympic cycle and the next out of the realm of possibility for them, unless they make an appeal and
Right.
challenge the decision, which they can do. That is an option.
Yeah, so this decision is open to challenge or appeal, but appeals processes take a long time.
Yes.
And so I don't expect that that will be a finalized thing for a while, but effectively for the time being, Fournier, Boudre, and Sorensen are out of competition. So that news dropped again right before Shanghai was about to start.
Yeah, like day of.
Yeah.
It was kind of wild.
Yeah, so it left the competition with only 5 teams competing, 2 of which are Chinese teams who are lesser known on the international circuit, and just based on scores here, were not highly competitive with the other 2 teams. So for our purposes here at Shanghai, we're really going to be talking about the first and second place teams. The first place being Italy's Guinard and Fabry. This is their second year in a row winning Shanghai. They looked very strong here. I still feel the same way about these programs that I did the first time that we saw them this season, which is that they're both fun programs that I can't quite get my emotional investment into, especially the free skate.
The rhythm dance, I like.
It's cute.
It's very cute. It looks good on them, and it doesn't feel out of place. For what the overall rhythm dance thematic is this season, I think they hit it. It looks good on them. It's maybe not my favorite, but I think it's strong. But I'm still not a fan of this free dance. I don't think it's bad per se, but I agree. There's no emotional component at all to me. And just please, with the costumes, I can't. And I know that the costumes are just one aspect of a much bigger program. I shouldn't get so maybe caught up on just that piece, but they're continuing to use the robot costumes from their exhibition. And again, it fits the music. It's not off base. And I get where they're going with this particular piece artistically, I think. I'm starting to, but I can't get behind it at all.
It's technically really precise and well executed.
Absolutely. There's no emotional core to me at all.
I can't find the entryway emotionally to connect with it. Again, they're such a talented team and they do
love them.
Beautiful things on the ice, but it doesn't make me feel anything. I can just look at it and go, this is all technically...
Are you a robot?
Yeah, exactly. Like their point total here of 209.75 is okay. You know,
it's a little behind where they were at their first competition of the season. But to be fair, the first competition of the season was in Italy. I'm not saying anything, but I'm saying something in the subtext, I guess.
Yeah. And I think there were a couple of little bobbles and things in here too. They were not perfect. So for me, this is one of those events where you have the second place team that is a solid 14 points behind. But to my mind, to my impression of it, was the far more entertaining team, the far more enjoyable team, which was France's Lapareva and Brasseau.
I'm just sitting here making faces as he's talking because I'm so excited to talk about their programs. I love their programs this season. I have not been not candid about my dislike of the rhythm dance theme this season.
Yeah.
But I could just throw that out the window when it comes to theirs. I love their new rhythm dance. It's weird and quirky, just like they are. And I love it. It suits them beautifully. Their free dance feels like, based on what I read, I think this is accurate. It's a bit of an extension of their viral techno in the club exhibition last season that was so successful for them. And it looks perfect on them. The vibe, the attitude, the connection with the audience, the connection with each other. There's just so much I like about this team. And it was so fully on display here. I'm so excited to see where they take these programs throughout the season.
With Lapareva and Brasseau, I feel like there could be pressure on them to conform to a more conventional style or something. And they're a team, it makes me also sort of think of like Laurent and Legac from Canada, teams that are quirky, that have a very distinct point of view, and that may hold them back to some subjective judging because they're not going to be everybody's taste. And we talked a lot about last season where even some of the announcers would react very coldly to Lapareva and Brasseau, even when we absolutely love them. I don't get it. I like things that are a little different. I'm also, I'm a huge Chalk and Bates fan. Like, I don't always want traditional. I want stuff that pushes the envelope a little bit and does something different. Mm-hmm. And this team's programs are full of character. They're exciting. They're just fun. Like you said, they're a whole vibe. And I think that's this team's thing, is that they're a vibe.
They are.
I liked their stuff way more here than I liked Guinard and Fabry. And again, I like Guinard and Fabry a lot. And I cannot speak to all of the technical stuff. Guinard and Fabry are fabulous on that end. Yeah.
Well, like, I'm not unaware of the technical superiority that Guinard and Fabry have. In watching both of these programs back to back, I could look at some of the specifics and get into the intricacies and see, like, okay, I see why what they're doing is a little bit harder. I get it. But at the same time, I often feel like Lopareva and Brosseau are underscored.
Yes.
So
criminally underscored.
I feel like those scores, maybe Guinard and Fabry still should have won on the technical side, but I think that a 14-point gap between them is ridiculous.
Yeah, agreed. And then when you look at the two Chinese teams that were there, I mean, you're looking at a 40 and 50 point drop behind the first and second place teams. So it's a pretty significant difference there as far as technical and execution. And those teams just looked a little more junior and rougher there. So
yeah, still growing.
Yeah, absolutely. And then if we step over to the Denis Ten Memorial, you've got a lot more notable international teams at this event. A lower scoring event because your top place team wouldn't have beat Lopareva and Brosseau at their other event. But a lot of great teams who had good outcomes for them here. And so the first place team is actually like one of my growing favorite ice dance teams. The Czech Republic's sibling team of Natalia Taschlerova and Filip Taschler. I really enjoy this team. I like what they bring to the ice. I think they create really unique shapes. And there's something about this team that specifically I like to call out, which is that some sibling teams suffer from what I think of as like one personality and two bodies, where they're so in sync and they're so simpatico together that they can create really great moments on the ice together, but there isn't that sense of two people playing together. It's like they're kind of uniform. And in second place here is the Brown siblings of Una Brown and Gage Brown. And sometimes I feel that way about them. Like their demeanors are kind of so similar, even though Gage is kind of a bigger showman than Una is on the ice. They still are just so perfectly synced. With Taschlerova and Taschler, I think that this is a team that even as siblings does a better job of having a sense of a different point of view between the two of them, stylistically a little different, even though they're very simpatico. And the way that they both skate out to the audience and skate to each other, I really enjoy it. They ended up with a 189.23 here, which is not an explosive number by any means. And these are definitely programs that need some refinement, but I really liked what I saw.
I did too. I think that from the first time we saw them this season to this time, you could already see improvement in both the rhythm dance and the free. It was a really solid outing for them, I thought, and a good step forward going into the rest of the season. I agree with you on the sibling pros and cons. Sometimes there is that incredible sibling synchronicity that they just are one with each other and it looks incredible because of it. But there's often that, I don't even know how to describe it. Like there's the emotional connection feels a little bit strained. I think it gets a little difficult in dance, especially since oftentimes a lot of dances tend to be romantic. And that's creepy if you are siblings.
Right. It's off the table for them.
It's off the table. So they have to be inventive with what they're going to do. And I think the Taschler siblings do it brilliantly. I've loved what I've seen of the Browns, and I think that their energy is amazing. But it is one place where I feel like they've struggled, is that side of things, that emotional side. However, their free dance this season, I love.
It's great.
It's phenomenal. It is so strong. And again, you're seeing that developing showmanship from Gage. You're seeing more from Una as well. And I just feel like their identities are getting a little bit more solidified.
This was the happiest I've been with the Browns in senior competition so far. I really liked what I saw from them here. I do think that they are evolving quite a lot. And then we had a really good outing in the third place position from Alicia Fabry and Paul Ayer.
They were first after the rhythm dance.
Yeah.
Which is a great outing for them.
Yeah. I often think of Fabry and Ayer as a very kind of mid-tier team. When you think about sort of the North American swath of ice dancers, there's a lot of really great teams between America and Canada, and it's easy to get lost in that mid list. And so Fabry and Ayer are not usually a team I think of first and foremost amongst the ice dance teams, but they acquitted themselves very well here. I still don't think these programs are super memorable. And I think that's my struggle with them in general, is I don't tend to find this team to be like very memorable. But, breakout moments happen. I talked last episode about how Zingis and Kolsnik are a team that don't tend to be very memorable for me. And yet last week they were my gold in my heart because
incredible.
Their new free dance was so striking. So I think these programs could get there and they could evolve there. More than anything, I thought it was really fun to look at Instagram and see the Browns and like Paul Ayer and Nat Taschlerova and Hana and Ye like hanging out together in Astana and stuff, which was just really fun and very cute. That is definitely part of my fandom in skating. I love to see the international friendships and people palling around and stuff.
International besties is the hashtag for Adrian.
Yes. Oh my God. I love it so much. And then in the fourth position, we had yet another Czech sibling team with Katerina Mrazikova and Daniel Mrazek.
They're so fast.
They're so fast.
Every time I see them, to be honest, that's the thing that I can't ever get away from. Even if the programs aren't that inspiring to me. I mean, I thought these were strong and solid for them, but it's their speed. They're so freaking fast.
Yeah.
It's just crazy.
They're really fast. They have great ice coverage. But they are, when I think of the like one soul, two bodies,
very much.
They're that team that really comes to mind for it. And it's why it's such a striking difference between them and the Taschlers. They feel so uniform together and it allows them to do really beautiful things.
But it gives them less identity.
Yes, they're so synced that it doesn't feel like there's an interplay of two characters on the ice. They do inventive stuff and they're immensely talented. And I really like watching them, but I always just feel like I'm watching a single personality. And I would like to see a divergence there.
Agreed. This was the first time this season so far that we've also seen Hannah Lim and Ye Kwan, one of our very favorite teams, only in the past year since they've only been seniors for a year, which is wild to think about.
Yeah.
Not necessarily their best outing. You could see the rough edges on their programs pretty solidly, more so actually in the rhythm dance than in the free. I thought the free dance was far better than the rhythm. The rhythm dance felt just done. It felt sort of like they had just gotten their choreography maybe a few weeks ago because it just felt messy and they're usually so tight with each other. But I didn't feel that as much in the free. It could have just been that first competition, shaking the legs out type of moment. But regardless, I love this team. I expect both programs to get better as it goes along, but it wasn't their best, I'll say.
Yeah, they landed in fifth. They were sixth in the free dance. As much as I love this team, I wasn't super impressed with those programs. The rhythm dance, I liked it, but it's not super striking to me. The Cruella program for their free dance, I think, has a lot of potential.
Yeah, I really liked it.
It really needs to be polished.
A lot.
And for all of the quirk of it, I think they need to maybe dial back a little bit of that and polish those edges off for this to be a competitive program. I think it's tough. This is one of those cases where their programs by the end of last season were just extraordinary. Especially their free dance last year was just wonderful. And these programs aren't that yet. So I'm hoping that they get that pulled together. I love this team so much, but I'm not as in like with those programs yet as I want to be. So
you'll get there.
I'll get there.
I do want to mention one more team before we move on to the men. In sixth place here was Isabella Flores and Ivan Dostoyev. I really did not enjoy their rhythm dance here. It just seemed like really rough. Not anything against the actual program itself. I just felt like they were out of sync with each other.
Yes, Bella was really good in the rhythm dance, but Vanya just seemed like he was struggling that day in that particular program. Didn't seem like they quite knew where they were at in it.
However, it turned around like a giant 180 in that free dance, and that was spectacular.
Yeah.
I am not being hyperbolic. I really loved that, especially Isabella in that program is so good. Her acting skills. Isabella is portraying the character that Emma Stone did in Poor Things, and they're using the music from Poor Things. I've never seen that film, but as soon as they get to about a minute and a half in, I immediately was like, oh, that's who she is. And I didn't know for sure. I hadn't seen that it was the music of that. The costumes aren't completely one-to-one with what I saw in the trailer for that film. But her movements, her expression was so in line with Emma Stone that I'm like, good job, Isabella Flores, for making me understand what you're trying to portray so organically. I don't know. maybe I'm just rambling here, but
No,
I was
you called
so
it.
impressed.
I was impressed with you that you were able to pick that out. I don't know enough about that film to have recognized the character stuff, but even not knowing anything about it, Bella's doing so much character work in that free skate. It's really fascinating to watch. I talk about a lot. I like to see a story on the ice, and I love to see real character work. And Isabella is doing that all over the place.
And it's not to take anything away from Ivan. He did a great job in that program as well. It was really well balanced. I thought that it was far superior to their rhythm dance. I hope that rhythm dance just gets a little more love. But I highly recommend going out and finding that on YouTube if you can. It was just brilliantly done.
Yeah, and this was one of those cases where they were 6th after the rhythm. They were 4th in the free dance against a bunch of other very strong teams. It still landed them in 6th because that's the way points work sometimes. But I think that was really promising. And again, they're such a unique team. Their feel is so different. And Isabella has so much star power.
She does.
Like Vanya is very good, but sometimes is a little rough around the edges. And they're still just cleaning up some of their deliveries.
But she's a star.
And that free dance has some real possibilities.
Well, let's move on to the men because I want to talk about Juhnwan Cha.
So yeah, if we look at Shanghai Trophy, what we saw here is what we'd like to see more of, which is Junhwan Cha sitting on the top of the rankings, in that gold medal position.
Yeah.
And he did that here. He did still have some rough spots. He had a classic Junhwa bad fall.
I know.
I think he dropped it on a quad toe.
I think so.
Because when June falls, it's never good.
It's right into the boards and he sits down and it's like he looks kind of dejected for a second and then he gets back up and keeps going.
And that's after a miracle of a quad sal.
Oh, his quad sal
His
is
quad
so
sal
beautiful.
is great. But yeah, if June falls, it's always disastrous. But the rest of those programs looked a lot better. And that free skate just keeps looking more impressive.
His long program is maybe my favorite of the season. I'm in love with it. It's so good.
Yeah. Now, again, worth framing, he won this with a 269.53. That is not a competitive score against the top men in the world right now. So this is definitely for the men a softer competition, but it's still coming together. It still doesn't have the entirety of his technical firepower in it, but it shows a lot more promise. And if he can just tighten things up, clean things up a little bit, these are going to be really good programs.
I 100% agree. And I'm going to refrain from just diving headfirst into a long diatribe about why I love June and his drama. And to be fair, I think that score is still competitive for the Grand Prix unless he is against 3 men. If he is against Yuma, Ilya, Adam on a good day, he can't beat them right now with that score. Everybody else, he's in that mix.
Yeah. Shun Sato can beat that.
Shun Sato can beat that for sure. But it also depends
Muir on a good day.
On a good day.
That. So, and a lot of that is for some of those guys is that, if they're clean, they can beat
always
that.
Exactly.
So,
but if he were clean, he would have been closer to their numbers.
Sure.
He still would have been in the 300 range, but he's up there. He's getting there. It's early season.
Yeah. And then we get a 2nd place finish from Denis Vasilyevs.
He was wonderful here.
Yes.
Like genuinely so good. And he's always so good artistically. His jumps looked better. Like he looked more confident. He had more lift. It felt like in his jumps, there was more pop.
A lot of pop.
It was just really a delight. I want to see more of this, Denise. Please just keep bringing it.
Whatever he and Stefan have come to agreement with this season, where Denise is skating much more for the audience than for the judges, and he's doing the programs that he wants to do in his way, it's working.
It looks great.
They look really great. I mean, a 257.55 total here, again, isn't a massive score, but they were really nice performances, definite crowd pleasers, and he just looks happier on the ice.
He does.
And it was very enjoyable. And worth noting that when we think about the top artistic men, especially in the absence of Shoma Uno, right? You're going to name Junhwan Cha, Denis Vasilyevs, and Jason Brown.
And they were all here.
And they were all here, and they were all your top 3. Now, Jason Brown in the 3rd place here is at a pretty low point total with a 242.79. This is not the pristine performances from Jason Brown that we're so used to seeing. He is skating very complex, very difficult programs that are clearly not fully refined, that he doesn't completely live in just yet. We talked, I think, in the last episode about the fact that he is back to the Rohim program that last season he said was just too hard.
Yeah.
And so he's on the competitive circuit ahead of nationals this season, really working to make those things better, but it was a little choppy.
I appreciated what he said in post-competition interviews, saying like he's trying to get miles on these programs. He knows he needs them. So he was content with where he landed because he's just trying to get his feet under him and just, like you said, make these programs his own, let them feel a little lived in. I think his short program, that is that one you mentioned that is a Rohini, I think it's to the music of Tarzan, I believe. It's incredible. That program would have maybe landed him in the second spot in the short had he not fallen on his triple axel. That one is real close. If he landed that jump, I would have felt like, okay, we're seeing a program at 85, 90% of what it could be. His long program definitely needs more time to just sort of gel together. He's Jason Brown. A lot of it still looked beautiful and incredible. It's an unusual feeling to watch a Jason Brown program and be like, oh, I can see you thinking. I can see you setting something up a little bit more. It's not just so fluidly organic that you forget you're watching a competitive program. He's so good. Sometimes I think it's almost whenever he makes a mistake, it shocks you for a moment, like, because he is so good. But also, unlike every other man in these competitions that has quads, because he doesn't, he has to be perfect to stay competitive. So I think that's also why we see a score like that, because without a quad, he has no choice but to be damn near flawless.
I will say that the free skate here is the first time in a long time with Jason where it was a program that I felt very disconnected from, and I felt my mind wandering by the time we got 2/3 of the way through. And I think he brings it back together, but I did have to kind of pull myself back into it. It didn't quite hold me. So it'll get there, I'm sure. I mean, this is Jason. It'll be great by the time we get further into the season.
By the time we're at U.S. Nationals, I have no doubt. But man, that short program is so good.
Yeah. And then we go to the Italian men's champion from last season, Nicolas Memola. Memola is one of those guys that is sort of a surprising upstart in the men's world in that he really came on strong last season.
And also he's a giant.
He's also, he's like so tall. Like, he's so much taller than the average men's skater.
All of them.
Than everybody. He's so funny to watch when you see him on podiums with people because he's like a full head taller than everybody. And he's very lanky. And, when you're that tall and have those long lines, you can sometimes look a little awkward on the ice. And I think Memola has to strike that balance between being a little gawky looking because he has such long limbs and really getting his legs up and stuff to make those lines look right. But when he gets them right, it's so striking because of his physicality. He had a pretty poor short program here that put him towards the bottom of the pack to begin with, and he had to really fight his way back up. But his free skate was much better because he was third in the free skate, fourth overall. 230.91 is not a good competitive score.
And nowhere near what he's capable of.
Yes, but he knows what he needs to fix.
Yes.
He was a pretty good sport about it as far as recognizing, okay, there were some clear problems. We know what we need to do.
I'm just so intrigued by Memola because, like you said, there are places where he can look almost a little floppy. He has so many inches of leg and arm to extend that sometimes it does not quite hit the exact right position. But I particularly love whenever he grabs that perfect edge on a landing of a jump and really extends completely. It just looks so amazing. Maybe it's just that he takes up so much space on the ice whenever he extends. It just looks explosive and exciting. And I'm really interested to see where his career trajectory goes because he's just such a different skater. There's something very unique about him.
There are definitely times where I feel like some of his jumps feel like the platonic textbook ideal of what a jump should look like. Mm-hmm. There's just a few of those quads that just look so precise.
And it's also like, I feel like his landing position is like the cover of books.
Yeah.
There is something like you posed it like so perfectly.
Right. Yeah, I definitely feel that. The other one that I think it's worth mentioning here, again, not a great score, but in fifth place was China's Daiwei Dai. Dai is usually a guy that in the past when we've seen him has been kind of human Zamboni.
He's been a mess.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
And so we weren't expecting a whole lot from him here. But he skated far cleaner here than I think that we've ever seen from him before.
Yes.
And particularly, even though, point-wise, it didn't get him very high up, his free skate here was just far more competent and clean than I think that we've seen from him before. I won't say that it looked confident, but he was far more over his blades. The jumps looked stronger. It was just a better overall piece from him. And so I was really pleased to see that for him in the end.
I'm hoping that that's a nice step forward for him, because outside of Boyang Jin, you don't have another Chinese man in seniors right now that, other than Dai Wei Dai, that is really making any kind of name for themselves yet. That may change by the time this is released. Another competition has happened and somebody just appeared. Who knows?
Yeah.
So watching him over the past couple of seasons, it has always felt like a little disappointing. It's not quite there. This felt like a really solid step forward. So yeah, I'm glad we're talking about him, and I hope that continues for him.
And then when we step over to the Denis Ten Memorial Cup, what we saw here was one of last year's fan favorite breakouts in Mikhail Shadorov from Kazakhstan. So here on home ice, taking the win here. Again, with a number that wouldn't have won at Shanghai. He had a 262.33, which would have put him in second place at Shanghai, and is not a hyper competitive number. But what he had here, one, was a really killer short program.
Yes, that's where I'm really going to remember Mikhail this week, is that short program, because it looked like a step forward for him. Like, you can tell he is so committed to the bit.
It's a damn Dune program, though.
I know.
Why so many Dune programs?
It's the season of Dune.
Season of freaking Dune. I'm so tired of it. But
he did it really well.
He did it well. He looks the part, right?
He does.
With his hair and look, and actually a pretty cool costume for it. You know, he serves the part really well. He's clearly very invested in that program, and that short program is really rad.
It is, and I'm excited. That long program wasn't what he wanted it to be, but regardless, it was great to watch. It was fun to see him continue on this like upward trajectory. I expect him to be top 8 in the world this year. He's moving up.
Yeah.
And he's getting better all the time.
A running refrain that we had for the last episode, and looking at some of the skaters in this one, is Misha was one of those people who was on the show skate circuit, particularly over in Japan over the summer. And you can see the benefit of that. And when we talk here in a moment about Nika Agadze, it's another skater where I think you can see the improvement that happened because of being on those tours and doing shows that were much more about entertainment than just jump skills.
I know where you're going with that with Nika.
In second place was the skater from Azerbaijan, Vladimir Levintsev. We couldn't find his skate online. So
nope. We were watching all of this on different YouTube channels that had these. I don't even know if I'm supposed to say that. I'm sorry.
We're just piecing it together from a lot of different channels that posted individual things. A few people posted like whole competitions. We just never found him.
Watching skating is hard, y'all.
Yeah. So Vladimir, all I can say here is that he somehow managed to pull that mathematic of being third after the short, third after the free, landed in second.
Good for him.
Yeah.
That's what I'll say, because I don't know anything else.
He always seems like a super charming guy.
He does.
His outfits are always really silly. But he just always, I mean, come on. There was that tiger striped Lion King outfit or whatever last season.
He was a tiger, but it was the music of the Lion King. It was very confusing.
Yeah, it was very odd. But he always seems super
Seems
sweet.
like a sweetheart.
Yeah, but we just didn't see him here. So he ended up with a 246 flat. Again, not super competitive.
But good for him.
But would have beat Jason Brown at Shanghai.
Hey.
So it's all a matter of where you're at. But the next two guys here that are worth talking about, I think, like one is Nika Agadze. Nika is a skater who, through a lot of last season, I just was underwhelmed by. He's got good ups. His jumps can be really great. His programs tended to be kind of histrionic in a way that I didn't think he was quite a developed enough skater to deliver.
It kind of ended up feeling very inauthentic.
You could feel him trying hard to live up to those programs, but he wasn't quite in that zone. But Nika was on those skating tours in Japan, working with a lot of these other international skaters. You could really see that he bonded with a lot of those skaters while he was doing that. And I think that watching him now, even though, again, this is a 242-43 set of programs here, when we watch particularly his short there, I feel like his delivery, his just whole persona on ice, his performance quality improved a ton.
It did. I mean, he's still not the most emotive skater. He's still not the most artistic skater, but he is starting to feel like he's growing. Because for a few seasons, it was feeling like there was no change. It was all very static. And this one, you could see a hint more of like, oh, I'm seeing more of a personality here. I'm seeing more of a character. And speaking of said things, now we can talk about his exhibition program, which is why I'm thinking Adrian wanted to talk about him anyway, because that was a surprise.
Well, because Nika came out as Deadpool.
Complete full costume.
Full costume with a mask on, a mask that he clearly couldn't take off while he was on the ice, so he never removed it. And while it's an exhibition that doesn't really have much in the way of jumps or big technical elements, he really embodies the character.
He sells the hell out of it.
He does. He really goes all in on that very Ryan Reynolds delivery of Deadpool.
It was when Lady in Red started playing. I lost it. I was waiting for Bye Bye Bye, because if you're going to do the Deadpool program, you can't not use Bye Bye Bye. That's just the rules. But whenever Lady in Red was mixed in the middle, I was like, oh my God. This I was not prepared for.
Yes. And for a guy that, particularly when you consider his coaching last season, I just really wondered if he was, I mean, this is very uncharitable, but he felt like kind of a stiff to me. It's been clear to me when I've seen him off the ice with other skaters that he is a far more companionable kind of fellow. And
friendly, very friendly.
Yes. In seeing him do something like this shows off a ton more personality. It feels like this is kind of who Nika wants to be, a person who has some cheek, who has a sense of humor out there. It was really fun. I was actually really pleased with that.
I also think it's a very good move for him because it's going to get him invited to every exhibition all season. No matter where he places, he is always going to be in that gala because every competition is going to put him in the gala doing Deadpool. Of course they are.
You're going to want that. Yeah, for sure. And then the fourth place here, and this is that kind of wacky story over the last couple of years because Daniel Grassl from Italy has returned to the fold. Nobody seems to be clear about how he's back in competition when he was technically suspended for 2 years.
And nobody will say.
He went off to a Thierry's camp and then missed all of his drug tests and then got suspended.
And then left a Thierry.
And then left a Thierry and then got his way back into competition somehow. And there's never really been any clarification on why his suspension was cut shorter or what happened with it. I hope that's all on the up and up. Daniel has always seemed like a good dude. I was really disappointed with his choices around that. But his skating here, especially his free skate, was like pretty darn good. He won the free skate.
He won the free skate. I will say his short was not as good.
Yeah.
But it was Daniel Grassl. I'm not his biggest fan in terms of his style and his, if you want to talk about music edits, his music confused the living hell out of me.
Oh, so weird.
It lost me.
So weird.
But if you're just talking about the specifics of a program, he executed it really well. I will give him full credit for that. And
I feel like his jump technique is improved a little bit.
It's a little less messy, for sure, and a little less awkward.
He opened up on a few of them that looked kind of weird, but Daniel has always been very notable for that strange position that he gets into when he's doing his jumps where his head is leaned way back.
Yes.
And he just looks kind of off center. The jumps here, several of them looked a little bit more self-contained than I'm used to. That awkwardness of where his head hangs back wasn't as much on display. It's not perfect, but it seemed
better
to have been improved a little bit. So I don't know what his coaching situation is right now, like where he's at, but I'm hoping that's something where they've been working on kind of just getting him re-centered and making those jumps clean up. But other than the awful music, I enjoyed his free skate. So like we mentioned earlier, Denis Ten did not have a pairs competition.
No.
So we don't have anything to cover there. And the competition at Shanghai was very small. It was all of 4 teams.
And there's a part of me that is hesitant to even cover it.
It was a mess.
It was so messy.
There are several high-quality teams that were in this competition, and yet those teams delivered really messy programs with a ton of problems. And last episode, I'd mentioned how I feel like the Hungarian team of Pavlova and Shevchenko are one of those teams that, like, if you leave any openings, they're going to heist a podium from you. They're sort of like a perennially sort of 4th place kind of team at the big competitions, but you can never count them out because they will typically deliver very competent, very strong technical programs. And when we had seen them already this season,
that was already on display.
Particularly their new free skate to the Pirates of the Caribbean program was looking pretty strong. And so they won this competition. They won it with a 183.20.
Which isn't terrible.
Not terrible, but they did not look good.
No, I mean, if I'm being honest, I'm kind of surprised at the scores they got.
Yes.
Granted, they still had a lot of technical difficulty in their programs to get to that point, but it still felt a little generous because there were just some really odd moments. Like they missed a death spiral entirely.
Yeah, they full on went into a death spiral, missed an element somehow, and then just pulled out of it and
looked confused at each other.
Yeah, like neither of them knew where they were at in the choreography or what had happened. They were both just like staring at each other blankly, like what in the world just took place.
And that's, I mean, missing an element happens. It was more the total almost like stop of the program in that moment that was a little startling. More than
expect that to happen in a practice, but not in competition.
No, like if they had missed it and then just kept going, I think that would have made it less startling and kind of disruptive to the program. And I mean, and they had other problems in both programs as well. If I had seen this last week, I don't know if I would have said all of the nice things about how the pairs discipline is coming so far, like we did last episode.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Like last time we were like, yeah, pairs is coming back. And then we watched this competition, we're like, pairs is in rough shape.
But it's coming back. It is. This was just a bad day.
Yeah, I have every confidence that Pavlova and Shevchenko will improve this stuff.
Oh, absolutely.
But, you know, them walking away with a gold here with programs that looked less complete than they did last outing and just looked like they weren't sure where they were a lot of the time. I was kind of worried at the end of the free skate whether Maria felt well or something, because she had that kind of uncanny valley stare of somebody who was not sure exactly where she's at.
There's also something to be said for going all the way to Shanghai for a competition is a long way to go.
Yeah.
So it very well could just be she actually wasn't feeling well.
Yeah. I mean, jet lag and time change and all kinds of stuff. Who knows? But anyway, they still ended up on the top of the podium, and they did that over the Italian team of Lucrezia Beccari and Matteo Graisi, who showed last season that they are a very strong team, but also had a lot of struggles.
Had a lot of struggles. Particularly Matteo looked exhausted. He didn't look quite ready. Lucrezia, I thought, looked great for the most part. She wasn't flawless, but I thought she was more on than he was. That said, I do like the look of their new programs. I think that they're looking more connected as a team early on. Like last season when they first showed up, I wasn't convinced on their partnership. And that over the course of the season, I certainly became more of a fan. Now I think I'm really seeing them gel with each other. But yeah, not the performances I think they wanted to put out there.
Yeah.
However, I will point out, I do think they were underscored, especially on their short.
Yes.
I thought that was better than what they got. So I didn't agree there. I don't think Lucrezia did either.
Yeah, no, her face in the kiss and cry after both of them, like Matteo was staying really positive. She had that face of, what now? To me, they won this competition. Outside of the fact that
Pavlova and Shevchenko did have more technical.
Because their jumps are good.
Yeah.
Their side-by-sides are strong. And certainly, like you said, it felt like Matteo looked stiff. And I think historically, when you're talking about last season, when we first really saw this team together, Lucrezia has so much star power.
She does.
I mean, she is a bright, shining star on the ice. Matteo, last season, felt a little stiff to begin with. And by the end of the season, when he really knew those programs, he could really play the character roles. And he's so strong. He's such a powerful skater.
And he is so warm.
Yes.
Like, that's what I like about Matteo is that, like, by the end of the season last year, you could really see his warm personality involved in every program.
I really question that over 5-point drop into second place there with them, because I thought they were the better team, even with the mistakes, even though they didn't look great. But again, I think it just comes down to just technical point total. Yeah, just the points on that one. Then you get a pretty severe 23-point drop down to the third place position, which is the Chinese team of Yang and Deng. I'm not super familiar with this team. They felt a little junior.
But they did their job.
And the thing was, they were enjoyable. They felt fairly new together. And certainly, technically, it wasn't crazy strong. But by no means did they have the sort of like embarrassing problems that some of the other teams did.
Yeah.
They weren't technically as strong by any means and certainly not as well refined, but they weren't as messy as the more experienced teams were.
That brings us to the last place team of Emily Chan and Spencer Akira Howe from the US. This team is a strong, solid team. They have been top 5 in the world. Last year, Spencer had a pretty severe injury that kept them almost entirely out of competition until the very end. This was not a good competition for them. This may be the worst I've seen them ever.
Yeah.
And I feel terrible saying that. I am attributing that entirely to they're just out of condition. This is the beginning of a new season after an almost entirely washed season. And unfortunately, it looked it.
And Spencer does seem to be dealing with a different injury right now.
Yeah, he looked like he was not quite there.
There were a lot of the lifts and movements where it looks like he was favoring, I want to say his right shoulder, and things that very clearly were not comfortable, not easy. But a thing that I have always struggled with this team is that they just don't feel very connected. When they do, it's beautiful, but so much of the time, their energy doesn't match each other. And when I see them out there on the ice and they just look like a functional team, but not a connected team, they don't look like they enjoy skating together sometimes. I may be overreading the situation, but there's just a lot of me watching them where I just feel like they're a team that is riding out their time together despite not really feeling very cohesive.
By all accounts, at least from what we see on the outside, they do enjoy skating together and they do have a strong connection and motivation to keep going with each other. It just also feels like when they get on the ice, they rarely make eye contact. They rarely, frankly, look at each other. So I think that even though they are a good partnership in some ways, I feel like emotionally, unless it is just the right day, it's very easy to kind of watch them and be like, this is beautiful, and I feel nothing. I hate that because they're both very good. They're both very talented. There's just that something, and it's almost like an ineffable quality, like you can't quite put your finger on it. And when it happens, I have seen them be super connected.
Yes.
And it does look magical, but it is not the norm, unfortunately.
Right. These performances here were definitely kind of a bummer. I'm hoping that they shake this off and that particularly like whatever his injury is a short run one. Because certainly we've seen that injuries for the men in pairs in their shoulders and stuff is pretty debilitating. It makes it really, really hard to do the rather insane feats of strength and agility that are required to do this sport. And knowing that if something goes wrong, you can drop your partner on the ice is so terrifying. So that can't be far from a skater's mind when they're not feeling well, is that they're just trying to do their level best to survive the program.
Yes.
So
just makes me think of Ryuichi.
Exactly. Thinking of Ryuichi Kihara in the first competition we saw from this season where he was in so much pain at the end of the program. So I'm hoping we'll see better things from Chan and Howe. I don't feel very optimistic after seeing that program, but it's the only thing we've seen from them so far. And with so little of them from last season after injury, we don't have a lot of data to kind of go on.
Exactly.
Only feelings. So right now, I don't feel awesome about it at the moment.
Well, let's move on to the women's because I think we need to make a point of saying Chaeyeon Kim looks incredible.
If we were just going on what we have seen so far this season, and you were like, okay, who's going to be world champion at the end of the season? Korea's Chaeyeon Kim is who my pick would be. She was fantastic at Shanghai.
Yeah, she was phenomenal.
Both her short and her free skate were stunning. She is developing as an artist. You're seeing just like...
I still wanted to get to her face a little bit more, but it's getting there.
But I think it is. I
is.
think that she's selling more. I think that she's expressing more. But her skating skills, her jumps, the positions and shapes and delivery, it's so lyrical. And shout out to her mom for endlessly just killing it on the costuming game.
Always.
Because her stuff, I'm guessing these are all her mom, because from what I've read anyway, it says that her mom does all of her costuming. But even down to her exhibition, which her exhibition is gorgeous and that dress is wonderful. Chaeyeon Kim just looks so good. And the women should be scared.
Yes, she looked phenomenal. And if we see the consistency from her like we saw last season, women should definitely be like on alert, high alert, because she was probably one of the most steady competitors last season. So if this is her starting point and she continues to be that steady as she goes type of competitor, she's putting herself in fantastic position. I also want to point out, I love her short program.
Yes.
It is so unique and it looks real good on her.
Yeah, so that program is a Tron Legacy program.
Yes.
And I love that soundtrack. And so super hyped for it. She worked with Benoit to do that one.
Who I know is a character in his own way.
His style is not everybody's preference. I tend to really like Benoit programs. And on her, it was unexpected. It's not where I thought that would go. I think it looked so strong on her. It was so unique. If you take short program, free skate, and then her exhibition, you get 3 extremely different storytelling deliveries. It shows so much versatility. It shows so much growth in her development as an artist and as a technical skater. It's so promising. She comes up a little short of 215, which is a really strong score. It is beatable. We know like Kaori Sakamoto can get to that like 225 zone when she's fully on. But what we've seen so far, this is, I think, the best looking stuff that we've seen out there.
Yeah.
And knowing that there's still some space in her ceiling there to improve these programs, if she can continue skating that way, she's going to be a big podium threat in the big international competitions. I can't wait to see her on the Grand Prix.
Absolutely. Also, we saw the return of Brady Tennell here, and I wouldn't say her performances were like the most exciting, but at the same time, they were solid.
Very competent, got them done, and came in second here with a 196.61, which is really nice score for her, especially in her first competition after, again, coming back from another injury. I was just impressed with her level of composure. You can't not expect to be a bundle of nerves after you've been gone that long again. At least from my perspective, even if it's not quite that bad, it certainly had to be a lot of pressure, especially looking at the depth of the U.S. women's field. There's a certain level of proving yourself. Like, yes, I'm back. I'm supposed to be here. There were a lot of eyes on Brady, so good for her. Yeah, I think as a veteran skater who's a little older than a lot of the field and is somebody who has been out with pretty severe injuries. And yeah, like you're saying, the U.S. field has gotten so much more competitive than I think we would have imagined even a year ago. That could be an intimidating space to walk into. And look, I've vocally never been a big fan of Brady Tennell because I just never feel anything from her programs. I used always the word competent because she is a great technical skater. If you can ignore some of the edge problems that tend to plague her in international competition that always tend to get overlooked a little bit in national competition here in the States.
They do for a lot of people, but yes.
I always think that Brady tends to seem like one of the more centered competitors when it comes to the mental game. She always feels like she understands herself. She understands the assignment. She knows what she's there to do. She is also working with Benoit this season. So I think you see that difference in perspective in her programs. And I'm happy to see that because I used the phrase earlier, in like. I've never really been in like with Brady's programs in the past. I can't say that I love either of these, but I thought they were stronger than I've seen from her in a while. And her landing here at that 196.61 in second place in a competition that also included Luna Hendricks that we'll cover here in a second, you know, another high powered skater. This was a really good first outing for Brady, and I think she should be really proud of it.
Well, let's talk about Luna. I'm a little concerned about Luna. She landed here in third place with a 179.78. She openly talked about that she had a difficult summer of training, that her performance at Worlds obviously got in her head, as it would. I mean, she went from the World Championships in Montreal, first after the short program, with a stunner of a short program, to a really, really rough long program that dropped her completely out of medal contention. It obviously took its toll, and she is rebuilding, essentially. The 2 programs that she has this season, one is Jazz, which she seems really excited about. That's her short program. And I think that one looked better.
I like that one a lot. I thought it was strong. I thought it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think that one had some technical difficulties, but I think that one is solid. Her free skate was, again, as we've used this word a lot this episode, messy.
Oh, I would call it heartbreaking.
Yeah.
That one was painful to watch. So a lot of criticism has been levied at Luna because she just won't leave her choreographer. And she only works.
It's not even leaving. It's like work with somebody else.
Work with somebody else. Yeah. I appreciate last season, you could levy the complaint that her programs were very samey between short and long. And I appreciate that she was going for that sort of Euro dance style. And it was unique. It was different. But the two programs were too similar to another. And by the time you'd kind of get done with the free skate, you just didn't, especially with just some of the elements at the end of the free skate, if the program was lackluster, it really fell apart. And that's what we saw at Worlds. Here, those two programs are quite different from each other.
Very.
And that jazz program really works on her. I like the look of that one a lot. But the free skate there, one just didn't look like she was mentally or physically fully prepared for it.
No.
And as it goes along and the jumps fall apart and various elements just don't work through that whole thing, when she finishes, the sheer disappointment in herself, you can see she broke down crying when she got her score in the kiss and cry, which I love Luna Hendricks, and she just seems like a lovely human being. And when I say heartbreaking, it's much more about her emotional reaction to it than just the program.
Yeah.
I hate to see that happen for her. And knowing what a great skater that she is, I'm hoping that this is not a portent for a declining season where we start to see her fall back. Yeah, because you see that sometimes in skaters that they get past their prime. And I'm not insinuating that that's what's happened here, but it can be the worry after you see somebody who's been so good for the last couple of seasons and then start to kind of break down. I'm hoping they can put it back together. I don't like that free skate very much, and it definitely needs a lot of work. But I adore Luna Hendricks as a skater and a persona. So I'm really hoping that they can kind of get her mental game together and her conditioning together so that those things start to feel right.
And regardless of any of that, ahead of the Olympic season, I desperately want her to give Sandra Bezic a call.
Yes, please.
Or there's so many. That's just
or like a Caitlin Weaver or somebody. Somebody who can do unique things.
We really got to get wild. Like, let's call Roheen Ward. That might be a step too far, but I don't know. Give it a shot. She wants to try things that are different. And that's what he does is unique programs. And there's so many that could help her.
You know who I think Luna Hendricks should have choreograph a program for her? Is Yuna Aoki.
Ooh.
Because thinking about Yuna Aoki's style and how she choreographs for herself, I think that she could make something beautiful for Luna Hendricks. And I don't know how she would have time to do that as also a competitive skater. Yeah. But if I was talking to her, I'd be like, call Yuna Aoki and say, would you choreograph something for me? Because Yuna Aoki's choreographic style is beautiful, and I think it could do wonders for her.
I really want to see a Sandra Bezic short program on Luna Hendricks.
Yes. Yeah.
I think it would be incredible.
I've seen people say that they wish that she would do something that would be more classic and classy, to see her go out there and do a Carmen or whatever. I'm like, that's not who Luna is. And I don't want to see her do a Warhorse.
That's not at all what I want. I want someone who is an expert, A-level choreographer to just put her way out of her comfort zone. And I think Bezic just has the chops to do that. She's a legend as a choreographer and also has worked with so many different people with so many different styles. To me, I think that would be just an incredible collaboration.
To step into a brighter side of things here, Katerina Kurakova came in fourth here, so just off the podium. But with Katya, we have seen a real struggle over the last season or so. Particularly last year, she washed out of Europeans after the short program, which was just devastating. And I think that as maybe the premier personality skater, right? Like, she is such an incredible performer, but her technical has fallen off over the last couple of years, and she's bounced between a couple of different coaching situations and just didn't seem like she had landed in a place that was working for her. Now she is working in France with a new team, and what we've been seeing from her is an improvement in that technical. She's got some of her triple combos back. She looks a little bit more confident. She looks happier in these programs again.
That's what I noticed, is that her personality was coming through, and especially in her free skate, I just felt her joy.
Yes, she looks happy to be back out there after just again, that devastating performance at Euros last year.
Yeah.
To see her come out, look more comfortable in her skin, look like she was doing programs that she likes doing that feel authentic to who she is. And she just wins over the crowd. The Shanghai audience obviously loved her, and she just felt like she was coming back to form. So while Kachi, it tends to be a more of a middle tier skater, in the right circumstance, she could be a top 10, but generally is falling just kind of outside of that zone. It's really nice to see her kind of find her way back into things. And if you are watching her on social or just in the kiss and cry, it's clear that her new coaching situation is a real positive mental space for her because she looks like she's loving what she's doing. And that has a big impact on both the skating quality and from a viewership, just absorbing that brightness that is her personality. So even though it's a fourth place finish here, it looked solid and it was fun. And I liked what I was seeing.
Agreed. We've been talking quite a while, so I'm going to probably speed through this a little bit. But the last thing to discuss is the Denis Ten Memorial Cup's women's competition that was taken by Anastasia Gubanova. And I think she looked fantastic.
I thought her short was really nice.
It was.
Her free skate had some of the problems that Gubanova has sometimes where you can feel her kind of falling out of the program. And I think that free skate is very one note.
It is.
I think it needs more energy variance, so it gives her something to ride on. It just feels very samey throughout. But her short program, I liked a lot. And in general, I really enjoy Gubanova's skating. Like, I think she's just a lovely, very classical kind of skater. When you think about sort of like a music box kind of skater that has that classic look, Gubanova has that. She's just lovely on the ice. But sometimes I feel like if she has fallen away from the emotional aspect of the skate, it can just kind of lose its luster. And I felt like that free skate did a little bit, but still, these feel strong for her.
I think the reason why I slightly disagree is simply because whenever she has any error in the past, she has fallen apart.
Oh, she'll just give up on a program.
Right.
Yeah.
And here she didn't do that. And granted, there were minor errors, but still, I felt like she was very focused. So I think that's why I agree that her free skate was not as good as her short and that it has a little bit of that sluggish middle.
It's a bit soggy.
It's a little soggy.
The soggy bottom.
It is a soggy bottom. We haven't even watched the new season yet of Great British Bake Off. And we're already there.
Is there a crossover? Tell us in the comments. Are you fans of Bake Off?
Yes.
Don't spoil it. We haven't watched it yet.
We have to catch up. But yes, I thought she was solid, I guess is probably a better word. And for the start of her season, I think she looked really strong. The person who actually impressed me the most was in third, and that is Laura Naki-Goodman from Italy. I was wowed by her long program. I loved it.
I'm a fan of Laura Naki-Goodman.
I know she's not amongst the top women and all that stuff, but I thought she was great.
So a thing that I like a lot is that she's not the best technical skater. There's always some troubles with some of her refinement, but she has a point of view that I think is really interesting. Last year, she had that Hitchcock program. And I love that program. It was never brilliant, right? Like, it's like she never quite managed to make it like a really, really great performance that I saw. But I was always taken with the uniqueness of the song choice, with her investment in it. Mm-hmm. She always chooses interesting outfits. Like, she's just such a specific skater in a sea where there's a lot of people who are just not super memorable. Even some skaters who perform well afterwards, I will just lose track of them because they did very basic programs that are war horses or very classic or whatever and just don't stand out to me. And Laura Naki-Goodman always stands out to me. Her, short program here, pretty good.
Decent.
Not something to write home about. It had her in fourth beforehand, but she won the free skate over a Gubanova, and that free skate on her looks great. And I dig it. So her point total here is a 188.86. That's actually, I think, feel pretty good for her. Internationally.
Yeah, for her, yes.
And I think that there's a lot of space for her if she can polish some of these rough edges, get some of that technical a little cleaner.
Clean up the short a little.
Work on some of those edges and stuff. She could advance. She could make a little bit more of a name for herself because she does have such a unique point of view. It's just a matter of how much audiences will respond to it. But I think that free skate could help her case here.
The other person I want to mention was nowhere near the medals, but is Canada's Kaya Reuter, Canada's national champion, who I believe by coming in 10th in the short here still has not qualified
She still hasn't qualified for Worlds or the Grand Prix.
Yeah, I think so.
Chaeyeon is so frustrating. And we had a lot of conversations with people in the comments last year because we weren't cognizant of this to begin with. That Chaeyeon is this person who routinely blows her short program and then comes back pretty strong in the free skate. But because of that, she just never hits her point minimums in the short in order to qualify her for those bigger events. So even though she's Canada's national champion, they can't field her in the Grand Prix or at Worlds because she doesn't have the international scores to make that happen. And here you see her land in 10th after the short, make her way up to 7th in the free skate, which is, it's not big. I mean, her score here is a 159.75, not big numbers. But when you look at her in a free skate, Chaeyeon can be lyrical. She can be lovely. She's just such a bright, engaging skater, but she just can't get those short programs together. And it was announced right afterwards, though, that she was changing her coaching.
She had been training for a long time with Scott Davis, who was a former United States national champion, who it seemed like she had a good rapport with. But while he seemed like a nice coach and helped her a lot, she needed to take a next step if she's ever going to change, especially with this continuing problem that she's having. So she's moving to the Brian Orser, Tracy Wilson camp. And if anyone's going to fix this, it's them. So I have lots of faith that she's in very good hands. And I think it's a very smart move whenever that problem just continues to occur. She needs a change of scenery. She needs a change of direction. I hope it was all very amiable because it did always seem like she and Scott had a really nice connection. But regardless, just to progress her career, going to Orser and Wilson is just smart.
I think most skaters run into plateaus.
Absolutely.
Over the course of their career where they've just gone as far as they can go with a certain person. And if they're going to correct issues, they have to go to somebody new who can push them in a different direction. And I think most of your really successful skaters do that somewhere over the course of their career.
That's what Jason Brown did when he went to Orser and Wilson.
Yeah. And I mean, there are some people who have been, very consistent over a long period of time. And then there are people like when we mentioned Luna Hendricks earlier, where, her coach is her brother and her choreographer is the person she works with all the time. And you sometimes wonder, is it time for you to shift? Because that environment is maybe too familial at this point to actually push you out of the places where you're struggling. Maybe you need something that's not just a comfort zone. That's what I wonder was the thing with Chaeyeon, where as comfortable as she might have been with Scott, if that was no longer an environment that could push her competitively. Mm-hmm. And Chaeyeon has so much quality, but is also, we've seen waxels and stuff from her where she can
wildest waxel I've ever waxeled.
She can just completely lose track of where she's at in the air or on the ice. And Orser and Wilson can make champions. Canada needs her to get those building blocks put together in a way that can shine on the international circuit because they just don't have the stable of talent right now to be as competitive as we'd like to see. You have Maddie Schizas, who is a beautiful skater in her own right, but is
not very consistent.
You have Sarah Maud Dupuis, who I adore, but has never hit the big numbers to be higher than sort of a mid-list skater. And there are other people that are out there, but none of them are yet really competitive in that way. When your national champion can't make it to the big leagues, you're having some struggles.
It's disappointing for sure.
So hopefully that can get repaired there.
Well, let's move on and wrap this up with who is gold in your heart. Have you even thought about this?
Oh, yeah. For me, it's Laura Naki-Gutman. I really like that free skate. If it had not been her, it would have been the Taschlers, but they did
actually
win
gold.
Yeah, at Denis Ten. So it kind of doesn't make sense to give them a gold in my heart when they already have a gold medal, but I really do like the Taschlers. But Laura Naki-Gutman is definitely a skater that I would like to see evolve and come up further in the ranks. And in particular, that free skate was one of the things that really stuck out to me from all of these. So yeah, that's it for me. What about you?
Oh, it's easy. It's Le Preuve and Brosseau.
Oh, yeah. Oh, it's a great choice. Yeah.
It made me so happy to see them. I love this team. I was unabashedly a fan last season, and I am as well. Now, they're just so quirky. They hit a specific button that I don't even know if I have a name for, when I watch them. But I can't wait to see these programs evolve on them. And man, I hope judges just warm up a little bit more and start giving them the scores they deserve.
Yeah. And shout out to their costumes and their costume designer.
They're great.
They're really great. Also, like, Jenya is just such an interesting character.
I love Jenya.
If you follow any of her stuff on social media, she is just so fun.
She
enjoy
is so
her presence.
animated.
Yeah.
I like her.
Yeah. And an additional achievement award to Chaeyeon Kim's mom. Because those costumes are awesome.
They are
look
rad.
Great.
We love them.
And again, somebody who would have gotten a gold in my heart if she hadn't already definitively won gold at her competition.
Yeah.
And again, if we were going just on what we've seen so far, world champion Chaeyeon Kim, eventual Olympic champion Chaeyeon Kim, we could see it. Depends
It's all
on
possible.
right now of the women. She's like the most electric performer that we've seen. It's been really good.
With that, let's wrap it up.
Yeah. Okay. So our next episode is going to come right on the heels of this one, which is just going to be a quick preview of the first Grand Prix competition.
Skate America.
Skate America. So hopefully, barring
unforeseen circumstances.
Yes, we should be at Skate America.
In person.
In person. We were supposed to be there last year. We had tickets to it last year, and then we had a massive family medical emergency that ruined the next couple of months for us, so we didn't get to make that trip. So cautiously optimistic that we'll actually get to be there this time.
we are supposed to be, but after last year, I think we're hedging our bets constantly.
Right? Yeah. Like when we're at the venue, I'll be like, "We're at Skate America," but until then, who knows? We should be there. And we're really excited about that because we've never been to a Grand Prix event.
No.
And we'll be there for the entire event. So if you will be at Skate America and you listen to the show and you want to say hi, we would love to meet people and talk with you at the event. We will post some stuff on Instagram so you'll know what we actually look like so you can recognize us.
Yeah, I guess we should do that.
So you can look at us and go, wow, that's not what I thought that face would match with that voice.
That's always inevitable.
Yeah. We've seen people a few times be like, I wonder what you guys look like. I'm like, we're not that hard to find online. Our photos are on the website and stuff. But yeah, I mean, you hear somebody's voice, you generate a picture of it, and they're like, oh, well, he's tall, but he's old. Like, what's up with all that gray hair in your beard? You're bald? What? Yeah, I'm bald and gray haired. Anyway, we'll put some stuff out there so you can actually recognize who we are. And we'll say a little bit more about this probably in the preview episode for Skate America. But we'll note that we will be traveling there with a disabled family member who will be at some of the events with us. So if you do see us and you happen to note that we're with kind of a shorter guy who's along with the two of us, that is Wendy's brother. And he's very introverted and very quiet. And those are maybe not the best times to approach us. But a lot of the rest of the event, it'll just be the two of us there. And we'd be so happy to meet any of you and just geek out about the fact that we're at Skate America there.
Well, exactly. I mean, most of our friends in our real life have no idea what's going on with skating. They're very encouraging of this podcast and that we talk about it and that we love skating. They do not follow it. So, man, it would be great to talk to some people that know what we're talking about.
Right. Yeah. All of our friends are like, it's so great that you like that. We have no idea what you're speaking of, but it's so cool that you like it so much. Yeah.
In the Olympic year, then they notice, of
yeah,
course.
A few of them are like, oh, we know who Nathan Chen is.
Yeah. They're Chen enthusiasts.
Right. Yeah. We've gotten them to watch some of that stuff. But yeah, unfortunately, in the real world, we don't share that with hardly anybody. So actually meeting people in real life who are also enthusiastic about this would be pretty darn cool.
Yes.
So we'll be more about that, like I said, in the next episode. And we'll share some stuff on social. Like, when we're on site, you can be like, here's what we look like. We'll probably be in a mask. So we'll be like, skate ninjas out there as far as covering ourselves up at the venue a lot of the time. But
yeah, again, we are traveling with a disabled adult, so we have to be careful.
We have to take a lot of precautions about stuff. In the meantime, tell us what you enjoyed from these couple of events. What were you surprised by? Who do you think are sort of the front runners at this point in the season? And who was gold in your heart? We always want to know that. Who did you really love from these events? And so for Scoreography, I'm Adrian Buskey.
And I'm Wendy Buskey.
And we'll talk to you next time.
Bye.